Good evening. My name is Spencer Sprague, field reporter for United States Daily News. Tonight, we have a special look as I report live from Vietnam about the aftermath of the Battle of Ia-Drang that has just taken place in Vietnam, and we will analyze why America's conflict with the Vietnamese is ultimately a good ordeal for the future prosperity of America. Before we take a look into why our military's interference with Vietnam is a good thing, however, some background information on the battle is necessary. With the Vietnam People's Army, or the Northern Vietnamese, moving in swiftly on South Vietnamese territory, the American military has deployed troops to South Vietnam in order to help defend its peoples from the spread of communism. One area of interest for the Americans to conquer was a site a few miles east of Chu Pong, a mountain in west-central Vietnam. American Colonel Brown selected Lieutenant Colonel Moore and his troops to secure the site on November 14, 1965, with explicit orders not to attempt to scale the Chu Pong mountain. Due to the topography of the American site of interest, Moore's 3 rifle companies and 1 heavy weapons company would all have to be transported via 16 different Huey transport helicopters. Each helicopter withholds the capacity to carry 10 to 12 soldiers, and each trip made by the helicopters would take 1/2 hour. This would mean that approximately 180 soldiers were dropped to the site of interest, with no backup reinforcements for 30 minutes in the event of an enemy ambush. Upon being dropped to the site, soldiers of Moore's company captured a wandering and unarmed deserter of the 33rd North Vietnamese Regiment. The captured soldier revealed to the U.S. forces that 3 NVA battalions were stationed on the Chu Pong Mountain, an approximate 1,600 enemy soldiers. This meant that from the first round of helicopter drop-offs, the Americans were outnumbered approximately 8-1 by Northern Vietnamese forces. 50 minutes after the first drop-off, 2 more lifts of American soldiers had arrived to the drop-off site. At 12:15 p.m., the first shots of fighting began. Fighting between the Americans and the NVA lasted much longer than just the 14th of November, as the last hours of fighting near Chu Pong occurred on November 16th. The combination of a lack of knowledge of the area and an inferior army in terms of quantity in comparison to the enemy made for the American effort to be a difficult one. The Americans were able to win the battle thanks to their superior ability to rely on airstrikes and, for the most part, conventional warfare. However, this is not to say that the odds were always in the Americans' hands, as the last resort option of broken arrow fighting was utilized in hopes of gaining a militaristic advantage. A conclusive analysis of the battle reveals that several hundred American soldiers were wounded and or killed from the battle, and there are several soldiers that are reported to be missing in action. Though this battle might sound as if it has been a waste, the American military accomplished several tasks through their victory of the Battle of Ia-Drang. One good reason for America's presence in Vietnam is that the battle taught the Americans that the use of air mobility, close air support, and artillery fire are all fighting methods that have the capability of fulfilling objectives on the battlefield. Using helicopters on the battlefield is a relatively new strategy in the aspect of war, and this battle has helped the Americans document the unparalleled success of airborne weaponry on the battlefield. The victory also helped the Americans become one step closer in conquering the Northern Vietnamese so that they may stop the NVA's desire of turning Southern Vietnam into a communist state. To continue, American presence in Vietnam has been necessary so that the domino effect theory will not take its full effect. Though there are few countries in the world in which communism is the central political theory, powerhouse communist countries have not been afraid to expand their power to smaller, weaker, more powerless countries. With America sticking true to its Containment Act policy, it is America's mission to aid any and all countries that are being oppressed by communism so that the spread of this radical political theory does not persist. Though some citizens are angered at the American government's skepticism of communism, the reasoning behind it lies in the history. According to USSR documentation that has been obtained by American officials, an estimated 14 million people were sent into gulag camps in the Soviet Union between the years of 1929 to 1953, with most of them being the USSR's own citizens. Prisoners of these camps were forced to work intensive manual labor to aid the state, and they were often paid with little to no food, terrible living conditions, starvation, and even death. In a place where citizens have absolutely no control or say in the authority of whom they are governed by, it is frightening to know that with communism, freedom is a concept that does not exist. Furthermore, American presence in Vietnam has been necessary due to the Allies' past relations with communist countries. In October of 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis had the entire world believing that nuclear war was about to ensue between the world's two biggest superpowers, the United States of America and the USSR. The failure of the Cubans and the USSR to maturely comply with the Americans in regards to their handling of nuclear weapons has made for uneasy tension and great mistrust to develop in the Americans for their communist counterparts. Overall, America's presence in Vietnam and victory at the Battle of Ia-Drang has been a beneficial action not only for southern Vietnam, but for the world as a whole. Once again, I'm Spencer Sprague of United States Daily News, reporting live from the battle site of Ia-Drang, signing out.